So welcome everyone. Good evening. Can you hear me okay? Great, thank you. So welcome to this Tuesday evening session. We have a chance to meditate together, and I'll offer some reflections on Dhamma, focusing on the Satipatthana Sutta, which is the theme for our winter retreat this year. And I'll leave some space at the end of the time for any questions, a little bit of Dhamma sharing. So welcome everyone. And let's first of all take the opportunity to practice meditation together. So please make yourselves as comfortable as can be. Closing the eyes. Always good to initially pay attention to the posture, whether we're sitting, even lying down. We can bring the attention to the spine. Let there be a straightness. If we're sitting in an upright posture, just notice, is there an alignment between the hips, the sitting bones, the spine, and the head? And it's nice to spend some time just really establishing a suitable upright posture. It helps us so much, so that we're not all crumpled up, we're not slouching, we're sitting up, and the head is just sort of square, perched on the body, perched at the top of the spine, in such a way that if we were to open our eyes, we would be looking straight ahead. And it's often helpful to just kind of rock from side to side or front to back to find that beautiful place of poise and balance. It's energizing to be upright. It gives us the space to breathe deep. It gives us the chance to fully relax. There's no need for the arms or legs to be tense. There's nothing for them to do right now, is there? So let's notice as we sit upright or align ourselves in whatever posture we're in, straighten up the spine, symmetrical, centered. Let's notice the shoulders. So often we hold a lot of tension here. Tops of the arms, scapulae, at the back, the kind of wings of the shoulders. Focusing on this area, we can just breathe deep and feel how we can let go of any tension, holding, tightness here. Breath by breath. See how the shoulders can drop. Sometimes there are knots in this area, tightness holding. And as we pay attention here and just breathe and simply allow things to ease and relax, we can feel a warmth, a softening, just like having a massage where somebody gouges into those spots where there's tightness or holding. Well, we can do this with our minds. How wonderful. It's free. You can do it anytime. Just pay attention, because this quality of attention gives space for letting go to happen. So enjoying this easing, softening and relaxing in the shoulders and the neck. Let's just see how that is. Sometimes we hold our heads at angles and in ways that are hard work for us. Just see, how is the neck area right now? Is it asking for a little realignment? Just feeling it out. Oftentimes when we pay attention, practice mindfulness in different parts of the body, it's as if we give them permission to come right, to find their place of easefulness, to realign. We can notice this. That we don't actually have to do anything except observe. So let's bring the attention down now, coming down the spine, part by part, down to the sitting bones at the base of the body. And again, we can have a lot of holding here, tension and tightness. So let's pay attention to the hips, those huge muscles, the buttocks, base of the abdomen, top of the legs. Just let the attention wash all around this area. And see if we need to move a little. If any adjustments start to happen. Because we'll quite naturally notice any tension here. Breathing into this part of the body, feeling it kind of open up. Warmth and ease, and letting go of any tension here. And I'd like to invite you now to bring the attention to the belly, base of the abdomen. Another place where there can be tightness, there can be stress, seat of so many powerful emotions, forces. Breathing deep into the base of the belly. Feel the breath right down here. Breathe deep. Just a couple of nice deep breaths. We can start to notice, can't we, how this part of the body is in motion, expanding and contracting with every breath. Even just very subtle movements. Can you feel it here, the breath? We may feel the movement of the bowels, intestines. And we can feel the muscles here, can't we? Holding us, holding it all in place. And often these muscles can be overly tight. Let's pay attention here and allowing the belly to soften, to relax. We don't have to protect anything. How does it feel? See what's happening here. Now I'd like to invite you to focus more on the breath. If you'd like to do so, coming into more focus on this rhythm that is breathing. This remarkable process. Such a wonderful object for us to observe. Anapanasati, in and out breaths. Where can you feel the breath? Can you feel to the very end of the in-breath? And that pause before the out-breath. How does it feel? And as the body releases on the out-breath, can we feel right to the end of the out-breath? And then notice the gap where everything stops. Before the next in-breath. This rhythm that gives us the opportunity to really sharpen, brighten, deepen our awareness. I'd like to invite you to follow the breath, the natural breath. The only effort here is to be present for this, not to miss a single breath, not to miss a single moment of this process. Feeling the flow, present for the pauses. The more we pay attention, the more refined, the more subtle our experience of breathing, body breathing. Whether you're feeling the breath in the nostrils, observing the rise and fall of the chest, or the belly, or anything else, just keep honing in. Stay with this. The Buddha said, just like a carpenter sawing the wood, all the attention is on that point of contact between the saw and the wood. Let our gaze, let all our attention be on this point, this moment, this breath. this aspect of the breath. Let it draw you in. Allow the attention to become one-pointed. And every now and then, just check the face, the shoulders, the belly, for any tension. We don't want to strain to practice Anapanasati. This is an easeful, relaxing, peaceful meditation practice. So just checking, relaxing, and returning to the breath. So we can sit together in silence now for a little while. Developing our breath awareness. Developing samadhi, focus, the stillness, observing the flow of the breath. Anapanasati. So I'd like to offer some words on Dhamma now. And on behalf of Ayattatthaloka and all the community here at Dhammadharani, we're dedicating our practice, especially this evening, for Ayya May Vimala, who passed away just recently in Sri Lanka. And even as I speak, her cremation and services are happening over there in Sri Lanka. So thinking of her and all her good years of Dharma practice, and also dedicating our practice to dear friend Barbara Mahan, who's one of the stalwart, inspiring Dharma sisters in this area, who passed away on Thursday night or early Friday morning, just a couple of days after we saw her at our session this time last week. She was asking questions, we were discussing Dharma. So very tender for many of us, her passing. So with these two good people in mind, I'd like to dedicate this time and begin with paying homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So this is the first Tuesday session in our winter retreat program. We haven't actually quite started the winter retreat yet here at Dhammadharani, but it's in process. The weather, of course, as many of you will know and have experienced in this part of the world, we've had some somewhat wild, wet weather, and this has meant that we're a little bit behind in sort of immersing ourselves in retreat mode. But nevertheless, we're starting to look at the Satipatthana Sutta, and the meditation this evening, Anapanasati practice, of course, as many of you will know, it's the first of the meditation teachings in Satipatthana Sutta. And I'd like to focus this talk on this teaching of breath awareness as it is given to us in the Satipatthana Sutta. First of all, to say, historically, this sutta is maybe a kind of mixture of different teachings that have all been put together. And we now have this Satipatthana Sutta. I would be fairly confident that all the teachings in Satipatthana Sutta are relevant for us, helpful for us, and we can use them as guidance for liberation. And what's beautiful about this sutta is that it is a meditation sutta, isn't it? And there are not so many suttas in the Pali Canon that focus purely on meditation practice. And so this is really a very valuable resource for us. And of course, the Buddha taught Anapanasati, breath awareness meditation, in so many different places at so many different times. This is a really basic or common or most useful way to develop our meditation practice. And actually, there are teachers historically, such as Ledi Sayadaw in Burma, great Arahant monk, many others who only teach this method. We could quite usefully, skillfully practice Anapanasati for their whole life, and we wouldn't be wasting our time. And of course, as you know, there's a whole sutta in Majjhima Nikaya which is dedicated to this practice, Anapanasati Sutta, number 118. But anyway, I'm talking about Sutta number 10 this evening in Majjhima, which also, Satipatthana Sutta also comes in the Digha Nikaya in an even longer version, Digha number 22. This emphasizes really the importance of this teaching. Coming to this first section, I'm going to focus in on the meditation instructions that the Buddha gives us, how to observe the breath. He says, doesn't he, notice, is the breath short or is the breath long? Or we can say, is the breath shallow or is the breath deep? I don't take this as a kind of single instruction myself. I notice that paying attention to the breath, there is so much to notice. But this invitation, is it long or is it short? Is really an invitation to pay attention, isn't it, to the process, to the rhythm, as I was saying in the guided meditation, to really notice the nuances, to notice the different phases of the breath, to make much of this ability to focus on this simple object of meditation. The Buddha goes on to say, feel the whole body breathing. Can you feel it? Can you feel the whole body? And this is variously translated. Did the Buddha mean feel the whole body of the breath, the whole process of breathing? Or did he mean feel the whole body breathing, this entire form with every breath? And I think this is a really interesting and quite helpful, significant teaching. Oftentimes, in the teachings of the Buddha, there is wiggle space. There's room for different interpretations. And I actually feel that rather than being a reason to dispute or a problem for us, it's an opportunity for us to look at things from different angles and to explore, what does this mean for me? How do I experience this? What does this teaching do here for this mind, this body? And I actually think this invitation to observe the whole body of the breath is something we can consider in different ways, usefully. For some people, there is a quite natural inclination, tendency of the mind towards samadhi, towards focus, towards really zeroing in, narrowing down the field of attention, coming to one point. So for instance, when we're, say, paying attention to the body, the inclination will be to go to some particular part of the body and rest the attention there and refine and kind of bore away like the carpenter with the saw, just working away at that point of contact. So a mind that quite naturally inclines towards samadhi. And another person, many of us, have a different kind of experience. So that when we're paying attention to the breath, we don't necessarily narrow down the field of awareness. It can even open up increasingly as we pay attention, so that we can actually feel the whole body breathing. We can feel the breath, not just in the nostrils, not just in the chest or the belly, but we can feel it in every part of the body. The experience of vitality, energy, the life force that comes in with the in-breath and permeates the entire body. The feeling of letting go, relaxing, releasing, kind of deflating can be felt as the breath leaves the body in every part of the body. And so rather than kind of disputing about this instruction from the Buddha to feel the whole body breathing or the whole body of the breath, we can actually try it out and see, what works for you. How does the mind incline when we have the opportunity to observe the breath? What does it do? And the important point really is that there's nothing, we can't kind of go wrong. There's nothing amiss if we find ourselves opening to the whole body, experiencing the breath in every part of the body, or really focusing on just one aspect of this body, or even just one aspect of the breath. Whatever we do, however we develop our mindfulness using the breath as the object of meditation, it's going to be good, isn't it? It's going to be valuable. We can consider that the important work is being done, the work of stopping, the work of putting aside, as it says in the Satipatthana Sutta, putting aside all covetousness and grief for the world. The willingness to do that is the practice. It is our meditation. And so to stop and to renounce the world is what we've already done. And then, as we'll learn as the weeks go by in the Satipatthana Sutta, there are so many different ways we can direct our attention. We can practice meditation. We can contemplate the body, feelings, mind, and Dhammas, thinking, phenomena. So coming back to these instructions regarding Anapanasati, breath awareness, the Buddha then says, the fourth and final instruction in the first little section of this sutta, the first meditation practice, he says, first of all, getting into the breath. Is it long? Is it short? Is it deep? Is it shallow? We're coming into the awareness of the breath. Really starting to pay attention, and then starting to refine the attention, either focusing in on the body of the breath or opening up to the experience of the whole body breathing. And then he says, can we observe the breath, tranquilizing the bodily formation? And isn't this just what happens when we sit down and we start to meditate? Isn't it so often the case that we're, sometimes even for a whole session, but certainly often initially, just aware of all the agitation, we could say all the covetousness and grief for the world, the bubbling mind, the tension in the body, the wish to be doing something else, the momentum of unfinished business that we carry so much of the time. So we first sit down and it can be quite challenging. This is why it's good to sit together, isn't it? Because we have a much more chance of managing to stay still when we have a collective effort going on. We're not likely to get up and go and do something else. When I'm sitting watching you out there in Zoom land, and you're sitting watching me, here we are, and this is so helpful because oftentimes we sit on our own in a more perhaps slightly casual way. Mara can really get in there and bring up some urgent business that just has to be done. And we can find ourselves jumping up. End of meditation session. Isn't it true that when we're most busy, this is the time that we most benefit from stopping and making space for practice? So, coming back to this instruction, tranquilizing the bodily formation as we give ourselves the gift of meditation time, we can notice, even when the mind is all over the place and there's a lot of worry, anxiety, stress, tension, etc. in the system, there's a calming, there's a peacefulness that starts to almost imperceptibly often, but nevertheless starts to manifest for us. And the Buddha's inviting us to notice this, tranquilizing this peacefulness, this calm. It is inevitable. It is bound to happen. How wonderful is that? Because we've stopped, because we're making space, we can allow things to slow down. And paying attention to the breath, focusing in this way, it's the most peaceful, sublime practice. You may not agree with me, it doesn't always feel like that, but it certainly takes us towards real peace, because we're letting go of everything other than this simple awareness. And the breath is such a wonderful object for us because it reflects the mind. So as we sit and we observe the breath, and there's a little bit of peacefulness, there's a little bit of slowing down, a little bit of relaxation, what happens to the breath? It becomes more peaceful, more calm, more subtle, more refined, And what happens to the mind? We follow that. We follow that slowing, refining, softening process. And so the mind reflects the body reflects the mind, and there's a peacefulness that starts to steal onto the scene. We can notice that. The Buddha's inviting us to not just notice that, but make that our object of meditation. So first we pay attention to the breath itself, long or short, harsh or soft, deep or shallow, etc. We start to really get into the breath, the body of the breath. Notice all the subtleties, the nuances, the pauses, the natural breath. This incredible, beautiful process becomes very beautiful for us, because anything that we actually pay attention to brightens for us, doesn't it? And it becomes more interesting, because this mind is extremely bright. It's illuminating. It's like turning on the light. When we pay attention, it's like we're shining the flashlight on whatever it is that we pay attention to. It doesn't really matter what it is. It brightens. It becomes more interesting. And so does the mind. And so we can start to really appreciate the beauty of the breath. It becomes a nimitta for us. Sharper, brighter, clearer, breath by breath. And then the Buddha says, start to notice the mind. Start to notice the peacefulness. Let that be the object of meditation. Tranquilizing the bodily formation, tranquilizing of the breath, tranquilizing of the body, tranquilizing of the mind. This experience of deep relaxation. Noticing that. Now there's a refrain that follows on from this beautiful set of instructions for us to practice Anapanasati, breath awareness. And this refrain that follows on is a repeating theme throughout the Satipatthana Sutta. So I'm sure that I'll be talking about it again and again. I'd like to bring it in here because the instructions continue. The opportunity deepens because the Buddha says you can observe the breath in different ways. Given these instructions, given this practice that we're doing, we can observe the breath inside and the breath outside. A whole extra dimension for us. How do we interpret that teaching? It's very clear in the Pali. It's the external breath and the internal breath. But it's not so clear where is the external part. So is it an opportunity here to observe the breath on the outside of the body? Maybe touching the entrance of the nostrils. Or is it an opportunity to consider that all beings breathe? It's almost the definition of a being, is that it breathes. not just animals, but also plants in a different way, perhaps. But they too breathe. Are we being invited to consider, to contemplate our shared experience? Our dear friends who've passed away, who I mentioned just before this talk, have ceased to breathe. The last thing we'll experience, if we're lucky, if we're fortunate in this life, will be the last breath. This is what defines, isn't it? The living and the dead, the breath. And so I think this is a very powerful and extraordinary invitation from the Buddha to consider the breath, both internally and externally. And he goes further and says, also when we observe the breath, let's consider it's arising, it's passing, it's arising and passing. This flow, this constant change. This is anicca sanya, isn't it? The awareness of impermanence. He brings this in too. With every meditation practice that we're going to be exploring in this sutta, the same instructions here. Can we, even as we're really getting immersed in breath meditation, paying attention to each and every breath, or the whole body breathing, can we also remember this reality that's presenting itself to us, isn't it? Every moment, that there is this constant flow and change. No two breaths the same. The breath itself, every breath is a change. It's a changing, flowing, constantly moving phenomenon. And it's a reflection of the reality that everything is changing. There is nothing in this realm, material realm, that is permanent. So again, it's a whole extra dimension that we can bring in, even as we sit and focus on the breath, just remembering, noticing, awareness of change. This is a really powerful contemplation for us. It helps us so much, so that when our time comes at the end of the life, we're ready. Because we're not expecting things to stay the same. I find myself breath contemplation, meditating on the breath. It's almost immediately an invitation also to reflect on death, because this is the very narrow boundary here. This breath, this is it, this is the life. If I'm not breathing, that's the end of it all. It's that subtle. It's that tenuous. Quite remarkable. So the Buddha's instructions here are really inviting us to wake up to the way things are with every breath, in every moment. This is it. This could be the last breath. And we can get to really know that, to really bring that in, and to make peace with that. We have a tendency to think of death as a problem or unfortunate, fearful, something to kind of push away to the side somewhere and not really think about until somebody dies, and then we're, presented with this painful shock. But if we're paying attention to this body and this breath, and heeding the Buddha's teachings on anicca, impermanence, then we're not going to be traumatized or shocked. It's more like, oh yes, their time came, and my time will come too. And all those that I love, all those who are dear to me, they're also on the same path. These bodies don't last, and that's fine. That's normal. It's nature, it's Dhamma. So here in this meditation practice, we are actually, in a way, opening to the reality, to the way things are. It's no small thing, and it's so simple, the meditation practice, and yet there's a kind of permeating of Dhamma that happens through the mind. Wisdom arises, understanding dawns on us, breath by breath. We are preparing ourselves. We are ready to let go, to let go of everything. The Buddha also says in this refrain, he gives a third way, a third paradigm for us to bring in to our breath awareness. He says, you may observe internally and externally. You may observe arising and passing. Or you may simply have bare awareness and attention on the object. So all that I've said, if it starts to feel a bit complicated, then we can relax when we come to this final instruction, because the Buddha is inviting us to, yes, okay, consider all of that, bring in these contemplations, and or simply pay attention here, bare awareness. So we can take some sort of guidance here, recognize that that's all that's needed. I'm speaking because it's time for a talk, but honestly, the practice is not the words, it's not the speaking, it's not the thinking about, it's the actual experience, isn't it? Moment by moment. Can we feel this breath? Can we allow ourselves to let go of all the covetousness and grief for the world? What does that mean? Whenever, thoughts, memories, concerns, desires, aversion come up for us, can we drop them? Can we put them aside? Can we simply let go? What I mean is, can we redirect our attention? Can we come back to the simple, the immanent, the felt, the truly present breath, body breathing? That's all we have to do. And the rest, the mind, the heart, that process of peace making, of relaxation, of deepening understanding, of the arising of wisdom, all of that happens quite naturally. That's not our job. Our job is just to watch the breath, just to be present and all the rest, the Dhamma, will reveal itself. And we know that. Any of us who meditate, all of us who meditate, we can experience the benefit of just this much. It's almost like we just have to leave it alone. Just have to get out of the way. Let the will subside. Let the control subside. All the views and opinions, thoughts and, ideas about meditation, let them all subside and just watch the breath. This last instruction, so helpful. Just bear awareness, bear attention. So these are just a few words about this first part of the Satipatthana Sutta, or rather the first meditation instruction. There's so much that could be said, but actually, as I say, the practice is in the experiencing, putting the instructions into practice and allowing them to just percolate through the system, to inform, to guide us. Ewam. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So we have a little bit of time to see if there are any questions or reflections, comments on this particular topic, and or your meditation practice this evening. So please feel very free to observe the arising of thoughts. And if they feel like useful to express, then please feel free to express at this point, and we can have a little conversation on Dhamma. Or say in the room, you're welcome. Yeah. Yes, Ayatotaloka's with us. How wonderful. Thank you for joining us, Aya.
Good evening, Aya, and greetings to everyone and to all in the meditation hall. I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing this time with this teaching with us. I was just reflecting, I think, certainly for myself and for many of us, we've read this sutta, we've heard talks on it, we've practiced with it before, and it is such a benefit to have you with us and sharing your many years of experience, teachings heard, practice with this teaching with us during this time. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for that, and feeling a lot of appreciation for it. And the second thing is, with regards to the body of breath, or the whole body of breath, or the breath in the body, I'll just say that I've also heard various different explanations about this, or different ideas, as you mentioned, and also just found it really useful to work with. And my own kind of way of working with that I found particularly useful is just knowing the breath through what might be called the touch points. That is, where we can perceive a sensation of touch through there being motion, some bit of motion And even now sitting, then I feel like touch points on the bum on the cushion, or touch points of the fingertips, like this. But going to the touch points of the motion of the breath through the entire body, wherever I can feel the breath moving, as far as I can feel the breath moving, and even consciously extending that, from where it feels like it's centered, or the center channel of motion is out, just as far as, until really it feels like a whole body of breath, and that there's the perception of the breath body. Yes. And so good, so useful, so valuable. Thank you very much for speaking about it, for sharing it with us, for inviting us to try it on, to give it a try, see what it's like. And I think causation, also see what the effects are from doing so. Anumodana.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you so much, Aya, for your comments. Could people hear okay? It's a bit quiet for us in here. I'm so glad you could all hear. Wonderful. Appreciation, Aya. Anybody else feel like sharing any questions, thoughts about Anapanasati? I wonder if you all like to practice this particular method. If any of you have difficulty or find that it doesn't work for you, I'd be very interested to hear. That's good. I'm now assuming that it works for all of you. That's wonderful. Terry.
Yes, thank you. I find that it's the most useful thing for me. My mind is very, very busy. And counting the breath and being into the breath is one of the most useful methods for me to meditate and quiet my mind and focus. And I always come back to the breath when I find, that I've sat down and the agenda is coming and whatever I need to do. And I always find, so I have deep thanks for your teaching and your sincerity, and also the clarity with which you taught the Dharma. I really appreciate that. And I just want to remember, I knew Barbara from when I went, when I first was going to the monastery. And so I just wanted to remember her. She would have appreciated this teaching. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Terry. Yeah, me too. I'm pretty much missing Barbara tonight. Her presence is definitely missed, and by all of us, I'm sure, who knew her. And I also, Terry, find that this meditation practice is, I have so much gratitude for it, and it's just a huge benefit for me. It's my first go-to practice when I sit, and it's not so difficult, to just come back to the breath, where other methods, techniques may be challenging. It's such a friend. It's such a friend. That's how I consider the breath, my best buddy. Thank you, Terry. Yeah, Smita. Samita.
Hi. I had a question regarding a section which talks about gladdening the mind, or sort of like being sensitive to pleasure and joy when you're doing the Anapanasati. So you in today's talk talked about focusing on the peace, and I've tried that, but I've never gone to the next stage, which is focusing on the joy or pleasure or rapture. So do you have any comments around how to get to the next stage?
Thank you very much, Samita. Yeah, my goodness, there's so many more instructions actually about Anapanasati, breath awareness, not in the Satipatthana Sutta, but in the Anapanasati Sutta, these 4 tetrads, so 16 different kinds of instructions. It's tempting to say stages, but like most things, I think in our practice, things don't go in straight lines, do they? So we can really consider all these different instructions or points about breath observation from the Anapanasati Sutta. I won't, can't go into it too much at this point, but certainly the sense is from the Buddha that as we develop this practice, the mind becomes, very tranquil, very peaceful. And as a result of that peacefulness, we can start to feel a real ease of being, well-being. One can even call it gladness, or even more strongly, rapture or bliss. These experiences often don't get talked about so much in Dhamma teachings or guided meditations. I think the reason is that if you're experiencing these things, you don't really need to be told about it. And if you're not, then it can make you feel a bit like, oh, well, dissatisfaction, can come in. And so that can be almost a bit of an obstruction. It can be, you're not necessarily doing other people a favor when you talk about bliss and rapture, if that's not in their experience and they're actually struggling with pain and distraction and so forth. And so I think that's why often, Samita, people, you don't hear about these things so much. It's like the Buddha himself, his first teaching was the via positiva, it was all the benefits that he was experiencing as the Buddha, the peace, the bliss, the well-being, the freedom from all suffering. And that teaching went down like a lead balloon to the person that he was talking to. He couldn't get, he wasn't impressed, or he was impressed, but he wasn't helped by that teaching. So then the Buddha started to speak about the 4 Noble Truths, about suffering, about the problem, the disease, the suffering that we experience, that in us which is not liberated. And that meets a need and helps us. So in the same kind of way, people don't often focus on these aspects, but certainly, Smita, in the Anapanasati Sutta, it is beautiful to see these different stages and to see where and how we can experience them for ourselves. And I would say that for most of us, we practice Anapanasati, we observe the breath, and we're going to feel, say, better. We're going to notice benefits to whatever degree, So I'm sorry, I'm not really kind of meeting your question, but definitely I would direct you to looking again and again at the Anapanasati Sutta and just really considering those instructions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ruanthi, last question, last comment. Thank you.
I just want to.
Oh, I can't hear you at all. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Just about. Can you go close to your mic? I'm sorry.
Mhm.
We're having sound problems here too.
From my side.
Yeah. Thank
So I
you.
just want to say I'm very thankful for the teachings tonight, Aya. I was very grateful how the way how you elaborated on like every little part. Like there was so much to think about, like in each little section, I believe, and especially how you connected Anapanasati with the death contemplation. I was really like, that was, I was really touched by that, how you connected the two. So thank you so much. And I think there's a lot to think again and again. So, and also thank you so much for all the invitations for us to try many different things.
Sadhu, sadhu. Thank you. Your appreciation is a lovely way for us to finish. It's a beautiful quality for all of us, isn't it? Gratitude and appreciation, and something we can all cultivate. And it's a beautiful thing that shines for us. Thank you so much, Ruanthi. Big gratitude to all of you for your practice and for your presence. Good wishes to you all, and particularly respects and gratitude to Ayatollah Loka, who's so kindly with us this evening.
Thank you
Let's
very
finish
much.
by paying respects to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Wherever we are, here's the Buddha. So together we can chant. Arahant Sama Sambuddha Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi. Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Satipatthana Bhagavato Sawaka Sangha Sanghang Namami. Thanks, everyone.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Good evening.